I'd like to call the August 2nd, 2021 meeting for the City Council for the City of Lake City to order. If everyone would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your many blessings. We ask that you look after our community and our nation and help us get through this pandemic and take care of our citizens and our law enforcement, our first responders, and all those that are in harm's way during this time. Give us guidance in our deliberations that what we do for our community is in its best interest and pleasing in your eyes. In your name we pray. Amen.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Hill?
Here.
Mr. Jefferson?
Here.
Mr. Sampson?
Here.
Mayor Witt?
Here.
Mr. Coverline?
Here.
Ms. Fields? Here. Chief Gilmore? Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Lake City Council has opened its public meeting since 1968. The city code has prohibited any person from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becoming vultures while addressing the city council. Yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There is only one approved manner of addressing the city council, that is to be recognized and then speak from the podium. And at this time, I have only two people that have signed up to speak, and so we're asking that you sign up, and I keep hearing that the public and the community wants the 3-minute limit to be enforced. We have no proclamations. We have minutes from the July 19th, 2021 regular session.
Move for the approval of the minutes. Second.
Motion and second to approve the minutes is published. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? On approval of the agenda, we do have some modifications. We're going to move item 11, City Council Resolution 2021-123, above item 6, which is the beginning of the resolutions. And so we'll start there with that because that's airport grant as opposed to the expenditures under that. Ms. Jamie Bell with Jones Edmonds will be speaking after the public comments to give us an update on the 47. And our city manager has asked that we have an emergency walk-on with the water department, and we will do that under departmental administration. With those amendments, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move. Second.
Been a motion and second to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is approval of the consent agenda.
Move to approve consent agenda as published. I second.
Motion second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are all ready to persons wishing to address council, and like I say, I only have two, so that's what I'm expecting. Mr. Warren, did you want to speak now or when that item comes up?
Mayor, if it pleases you, I want to speak. I think I put it on item 14, so I would like to go at that time.
At that time, okay. I've been asked to, that there's been accusations that I have any consideration for racist groups, and I want to say publicly, I have no support for racist groups or discrimination on any basis. Why that even came up, because I've never done anything like that, don't support anything like that. Okay, Mr. Bowden, if you want to go ahead. That's fine. Ms. Newton. Please keep it to 3 minutes and
Let's pray. I do that all right, Mr. Mayor. I am a preacher. We tend to go over to the council, to the mayor. I rise as the pastor of New Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church out of sincere concern over our allowance of a racist, white supremacist group to meet inside of our city borders. 2 years ago, this same group came to town and the city hid behind the armor that the event was held in the county. Well, this time it's held in the city limits on property that is owned by the city. We need to address it. We need to look at why this group continues to come here. We know why, because we allow the commemoration of the Battle of Olustee in our city limits. And I think it's time that this council looks at that relationship with the Olustee Festival. We've seen the financial impact of not having it last year with COVID. Our city still did pretty good. And it's time that we look at it and separate ourselves from a battle that was won and a war that was lost, and move forward with diversifying ourselves and being a place where people want to invest, companies want to grow, and not have to worry if every few years a group that does not like people that look like me decide they want to come to this city and celebrate something like that. It's on you now because it's not in the county, it's in the city. And if we sit by and continue to let it be, I think it's silent consent and it gives them approval to come. So sometimes we got to take the courage of our commitments, the courage of our convictions. We talked about removing a monument that played ping pong between the city and the county that's going to stay for a while. But this is something that's in your power to separate the relationship with that. For all of you members of the dais to come out and speak against it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for already doing that. And showing that we want to move forward and not keep looking back for something that happened a long time ago. And as long as there are people who are vocal in this community, it won't be loud, it won't be allowed, it won't be welcome. And we're asking that you join in and singing this song of You're Not Welcome Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Biden.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Glenn Bowden, at the risk of being redundant, I do want to speak to the League of the South coming into our community. As Reverend Newton mentioned, 2 years ago, I was involved with the protests opposing out of Lake Baskin North. And here we are 2 years later. The same group is coming to Lake City. Now, this is not a group that's advocating secession. This is a group that, if you check their background, they got members who they're speaking at this gathering that's opposed to race mix. It's on the record. This group opposed interference by the federal government. They want secession. They're anti-black. All you gotta do is just look at them. They was in Charlottesville. They was in DC. The League of the South is not just a political organization. It's a racist, hateful organization. It's been determined that. So for us as a community, and you as a city council, that's everybody included, not to take a stand. Now you may not can stop. I think you can, but not to verbally say that you oppose this type of group coming to our community. Send a signal to me as I got a history of civil rights. Silence is acceptable. And I'm not accusing anybody of being a racist because you don't speak out. But let me tell you this. In the past, people who allowed lynching to take place, but was not involved with the lynching, they were as guilty as the lynching as those who did. And that's how I see it. So it's come a time now that this community got to say no, 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 no. Because at some point in time, it's going to be, and it's, I mean, just read up on them. Read up on the speakers. Every one of those speakers got something to say. One person is on a video that you're on, Mr. Mayor. It's called Southern Discomfort. You feature prominently on the speaker. One person get up there and say, if you don't like it, then go back to the country you come from. So this is the kind of group that's coming to our community. It's going to be right down there on at the Garden Club and the Women's Club by Lake Isabel. Now, we do intend to be there, and we do intend to protest. It's going to be peaceful, it's going to be loud, but somebody got to say no. And if the governmental bodies in this community, and the business community won't say anything, and the religious community on the other side of the track won't say anything, there's those of us who feel strongly about that. I'm a part of the Northeast Florida Anti-Racism Group. I'm associated with the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm associated with local activists here in the community. The answer is no, and it's not just black folks speaking out against it, it's white people too. And so I guess the question is, do you have any control as a city council over that agreement alleged that they have with the Women's Club to have this event on the 7th? And if the answer is yes, then what can you do about it? If you can't do anything about it, then go on record and say you can't do anything about it. But it's upsetting to me. I'm more bitter now than I was 2 years ago. Because at least 2 years ago, it was a surprise. Now they're here, you know, and we still sitting around as if it's okay because it's just a few of them, you know. And so that's what I got to say. They shouldn't be here, and we should take a position against it.
Okay,
Ms. Fields, is there any thing that the city council can do about this? To either you or Golan?
Mr. Hill, my office can look at it a little closer as to what the First Amendment rights are of a renter who wants to rent public property. The property is owned by the city, although it is rented out to not-for-profit private entities. We can look at the First Amendment issues. I believe that we're going to find that we cannot discriminate as to what the content of a speaker wants to speak, no more than we could right out here at Lusty Park if someone wants to protest, as long as it's a peaceful protest. Last week, when it was brought to our attention, Ms. Fields' office, my office, and the police department's office, perhaps others that escaped me, we looked at the application details and the guidelines that the two entities that rent what is known as the Women's Club, it's the Women's Club and the Garden Club. We looked at those application guidelines because we learned that the application was filed by an individual who put its purpose as a Republican conference, and then the flyers were going out on social media and in the public that it was not a Republican conference and it was not one individual renting and applying to have an event there. We also looked at the insurance requirements of the lease between the city and those two entities. So we looked at it from those two angles last week, as well as security. We did not feel that it was the First Amendment issues were going to deny the venue to the applicant. Those other three issues, namely the security issues, were our primary interest. We will now go into and look at the First Amendment issues, but I believe that we're going to find, just like in 2017, when the University of Florida told Richard Spencer that he could not go there, and that they had to retract that, had to allow him to go there as long as he paid the reasonable cost of security. But we will look at it briefly.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
So the reasonable cost of security is something that concerns me a little bit. I mean, you've got an organization that's not honest on their application. So who is going to pay for that cost? Is it going to be the Garden Club and the Women's Club, or will it be the applicant? Because there's nothing in their application that calls for them to pay for that. And the city resident should not be required to pay for it.
Mayor, may I address that?
sure.
Mr. Sampson, our position, meaning the city manager's office, my office, was that the tenants that are in privy contract with the city would be responsible for it, that being the Garden Club and the Women's Club. If they want to rent to an organization that may or may not have First Amendment rights, I, again, presume that they do have strong First Amendment rights. If they wish to rent to that entity, then it's their responsibility to go and be made whole by what they have to pay the city. But the city would be looking at the Women's Club and Garden Club for any reasonable security costs.
And does the same hold true for the insurance as well?
Yes, the agreement from 2003 does state what insurance coverages must be enforced, and quite frankly, those need to be readdressed. The value of the property is quite different than it was in 2003.
I want to say that Chief Gilmore received an email sometime today regarding that matter.
Thank you. Just want to, if you want to continue discussion about what to do in the future, but with this particular email, it's being coordinator of the Board Garden Club, but they will not be having that at that location. They have requested the coordinator of the meeting. They will not have. Discussion of which will be fine. This particular. How many inquiries and that will not be shared with us.
Mr. Mayor, Chief.
Yeah.
What other facilities besides the Women's Club and Garden Club, we allow subletting through another nonprofit organization? Because, I can see where this could be an issue for other groups in the future and other venues. So I think we need to, as a city, we probably need to review our relationship with these groups and the nonprofits I'm talking about that we may be with and subletting. It's maybe not, I don't know, maybe it's not the best thing for a city to do, but.
Right. Okay. All right, so the event's off as far as the Women's Club, and we do need to look into our lease arrangements. Okay, at this time, Ms. Jamie Bell with Jones Edmonds would like to address us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I would take time, let me come to these meetings and update you. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the State Road 47 I-75 improvement project. Can you hear me now? No? Okay. I need to speak loudly too, that's, but I know the folks online probably don't benefit.
They were working.
Oh my God. That's okay.
Test 1, 2.
Test. Okay, let's try that again. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you so much for having me this evening. I love coming to update y'all. I wanted tonight to talk about the State Road 47 I-75 wastewater improvements project. I wanted to let y'all know, so last month you did bring a contractor under contract to order the materials and get us moving forward in the process because we anticipated it would take a couple of months to get those materials in. Well, good news, the materials are arriving earlier than expected. We're expecting our first shipment tomorrow, actually, and we've been working with city staff. We had a meeting today to make sure the laydown yard is prepared and all that good stuff. And so we anticipate actually being able to go to construction in the beginning of September, which is a few months ahead of schedule from what we originally had hoped for. So that's great news. And I also wanted to ask council to start discussing a possible date for a groundbreaking ceremony. We'd like to work with your staff to host a groundbreaking in the first half of September when we're ready to get started. We would, of course, invite all of the elected officials, both locally and at the state and federal level, as well as the funding agencies who took part in making this project happen, and any interested community members who want to attend as well. So I wanted to bring that before council for your consideration. You don't have to decide while I'm standing here right now, but if you could discuss what dates would be best for you, I'd be happy to work with those to make it happen.
Okay, good. We'll get together and see what everybody's available and coordinate it with you.
Fantastic. Great.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question if it's okay.
Sure.
So with this 3 months ahead of time for the supplies, is that going to move up the endpoint possibly?
So in our contract with Legacy Water Group, who is the contractor selected for this project, we gave them 12 months from when construction begins to complete the project. Well, yes, I do anticipate it may be completed sooner than 12 months. That is what they are contractually allowed within 1 more month for us to close everything out. So that being said, if we got started 1st of September, then by midsummer next year, we would be ready to go to hook up users, et cetera. Hoping it would be quicker, but that's the time frame we've allotted.
Good news.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you for coming. Okay, under ordinances, we're to open a public hearing on city council ordinance number 2021-2195 on final reading. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending section 22-4 of Article 1 of Chapter 22 of the Code of the City of Lake City, providing for a schedule of permit fees, providing for the relocation or demolition of buildings and structures, providing for the setup of mobile homes, manufactured homes, and modular homes, providing for the addition of driveway access, providing for the establishment of the city's military veteran building permit discount program, providing for the repeal of conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date, period.
This was passed by the council on first reading June the 7th, 2021. Is anybody in the audience wish to speak to this ordinance? Or anybody online? If nobody wishes to speak, we will close the public hearing, move into adoption of city council ordinance 2021-2195.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of City Council Ordinance 2021-2195.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. And the new business we're to hold, but not a public hearing, it's city council resolution, ordinance number 2021-2199, first reading. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, pursuant to petition ANX 20-03 relating to the voluntary annexation, making findings, annexing certain real property located in Columbia County, Florida, which is reasonably compact and contiguous to the boundaries of the City of Lake City, Florida, into the boundaries of the City of Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, we're moved to adoption of city council ordinance 2021-2199, first reading.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for adoption of City Council Ordinance number 2021-2199.
Second it.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Sykes, do you call the roll?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Next, we'll take up item 11, city council resolution 2021-123. Mr. Coberline, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the acceptance of a grant award in an amount of up to $166,520.00 from the United States of America, acting through the Federal Aviation Administration in accordance with the Department of Transportation Appropriations Act of 2021 for projects at the Lake City Gateway Airport, providing for the realignment of taxiway C, providing for the rehabilitation of the apron and taxi lanes, and providing for an effective date, period.
Is there a motion that city council resolution number 2021-123?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-123.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Mr. Brad Winty's here for pastor. This is 100% grant, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mayor. It's 100% FAA money.
It's a good thing. All right, anybody else have any comments? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Now we'll move back up to item 6, city council resolution 2021-082. Caroline, to read that by title.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of task assignment 14 with Passero Associates LLC for professional services related to the realignment of taxiway C at the Lake City Gateway Airport at a cost not to exceed $59,150.00 and providing for an effective date, period.
Is there a motion that city council resolution 2021-082?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of resolution 2021-082.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Sox, will you call the roll?
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2021-087. Mr. Carolina, can you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of task assignment 15 with Passero Associates LLC for professional services related to the rehabilitation of the apron and taxi lanes at the Lake City Gateway Airport at a cost not to exceed $103,370.00 and providing for an effective date period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution 2021-087?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for approval of City Council Resolution number 2021-087.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion by council? Sox, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2021-106. Mr. Carolina, read that by title.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing and ratifying the appointment of Amy Mitchell Fields as interim city manager, providing for the execution of an employment agreement with Amy Mitchell Fields and providing for an effective date period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution number 2021-106?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve resolution 2021-106.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion by council?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I have some concerns with the agreement as it's written. One of the things that I'm concerned about is, in my opinion, it doesn't fully recognize the temporary situation of a interim city manager. So, for example, the agreement talks about termination, and I think that there is potentially a negative connotation to that. For me, I would like to see an agreement that we renew as we're in this interim process so that the individual who is serving in the interim role is not terminated. We would renew that contract, but we wouldn't necessarily terminate that individual. A new contract would need to be negotiated when the interim title comes off if our current interim is selected. So a new contract would need to be negotiated. And so that individual who's serving in the role now, Ms. Fields, would not be terminated. Same if Ms. Fields was not the selection, then my concern would be we still, as a city council, would not necessarily look to terminate Ms. Fields. That would be the purview of the oncoming city manager. So I think there's a negative connotation to termination. And so for me, I think that we could do a contract and then renew that contract as we're in this interim phase. And then once selection is made, then we negotiate a permanent contract.
And I agree with that. That was my take on it too. It's more like a permanent contract. And we want to, do everything to make everything work right. That she does need a contract, but it needs to be worded in the proper manner. But yeah. Ms. Oxley, call the roll.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
No.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Nay. Okay, next is City Council Resolution 2021-120. Mr. Carolina, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of an agreement with Inglewood Electrical Supply Company for the purchase of programmable logic controllers at a price not to exceed $139,496.20, providing for an exception to the competitive procurement of the commodity and providing for an effective date period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution 2021-120?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2021-120.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I have concerns about this item as well. My biggest concern is when I looked in the additional information, the money to the $139,000 is coming from an account that we set aside $350,000 for to install a new well for the city of Lake City. So that's infrastructure. So there was a project last city council meeting. We didn't fund the infrastructure project. Mr. Dahl informed us that that was a Bell Road project, $300,000 give or take. And then now we have this project where when we did the budget last year, we said that we needed a new well and we set aside $350,000. Maybe Ms. Fields can speak to this. One of my biggest concerns is I didn't know that the decision had been made not to get the well. And if the prices, again, if the prices came back over $350,000, I would have thought that the council would have been informed and we could have determined if we wanted to move forward and add more money. But I haven't seen anything, any pricing on the well that this money would be coming from. So that's my concern. We're another infrastructure project that we're not funding if we pass this resolution.
Mike is gonna elaborate.
Good evening. Actually, last year when this project was funded, it was funded for an extra well in the event that we had problems. It's not needed. And when we originally done this, we got it engineered and went out to bid through procurement. And by the time that happened, we had the backup and all of these supplies and price increase and stuff. And our first bids came back at double the price of what we had originally budgeted for. So we then asked the company to go back and try to find some new bids that may be cheaper that we could bring back to council and maybe boost it up and get this done. And by the time they came back, they quadrupled. So a well that was originally looked to be, when it was engineered by Flow Rural Water, to be about $350,000 has now turned into $1 million. It is a project that I had put in the budget last year. Mr. Heppenberg approved that and cut the PLC money. The PLCs, these are what controls the whole water treatment plant. These things are out of date. They're end of life. They don't make them anymore. We do have a contract where they keep one on the shelf for us. So if we do have a problem, but that's not guaranteed that it breaks tomorrow, we get the new one that's on the shelf that they've held on to and put it in there, and the next day lightning strikes and takes that out, and then we have no PLCs and the plant has to be run manually rather than by computer. So we figured without that extra money for infrastructure, this is actually infrastructure. This is what runs and controls our water treatment plant. So we did what we could do, because if you'll notice, the prices are so increased. Last year, I budgeted $110,000 for everything. Well, this right now is $139,000 just for the supplies that they can get us before the end of this budget year. If you added on the extra panel views, which they wouldn't be able to get to us till November, the price of this has actually gone up around $70,000 in 1 year. So if we wait until next year's budget, it's going to even go up even further. So we're going to be paying 3 times what we would have paid last year. That's why when we've talked about it in utilities, me, Mr. Dial, and our new, Richard and Jason Dimas, we figured we would try to get this switched over, get as much of it ordered as we can, keep the price down, keep the plant in case there's a catastrophic problem. And we know that the well was not going to be able to be done, and we're not going to be able to fund the well this year either. So,
Did the utility committee go over this, that you know?
Yes, sir.
They did,
Yes, sir.
and their recommendation was to change the budget.
Pretty much, yes, sir.
So, Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of questions that just come to mind. Number one, why do we advocate for a well in the budget process last year? If it's if now we're being told that our community doesn't need that well, that's a serious amount of money. It was a serious amount of money last year when we advocated for it and we set that money aside. So what changed? Why did we need it last year? We don't need it this year.
When that well was budgeted for spare because of your previous, when we had one of our wells down for rehab, we lost another well. We were with 2 wells. Okay, with 2 wells running, it only produces 5.5 million a day, and our flow was at 3.5. So when we discussed it last year, we thought we would go with the installation of a new well of a different type that could be removed and put back in faster than the vertical turbines that we currently have in the wells. There was a discussion was brought up. Mr. Heffenberger decided he wanted to go that route, and that's the way we went.
So for me, Mr. Mayor, nothing has changed. I mean, still, if we have a well down, we have a well down. Our GPMs hasn't changed. I appreciate the response and the honesty. As far as the PLCs, it's not a competing thing. If we need PLCs to run water, then absolutely we need to fund that, but we need to budget that and fund that, right? So we're coming into a budget. So why would we not bring that up in this budget, find the funding and funding source and fund that? It's just, to me, the concern is 2 city council meetings in a row now. We've had infrastructure projects for our community that we're talking about not funding because of equipment needs. We need to, in the budget process, identify our equipment needs for the year and project that out and not continue to defund infrastructure in the city.
Mr. Green, if I may interject, it's not as easy as that with the utilities department. It all looks good in black and white, but throughout the year, things happen with the utilities department and funding needs change. Perfect example is the emergency one we got coming up later with my ozone generators, okay? We had them checked out in May. One was ready to be cleaned and the other one was getting close. So we budgeted for next year. But now, with some of the circumstances we've had happen over the last couple of months, this one is getting worse and worse, and it may fail before we can get the budget approved, the parts ordered, the parts built, the parts turned in. And then you put your whole citizens in jeopardy. So when we do things in utilities, we do them by necessity. And sometimes that changes throughout the year. It's not something we plan in advance, but sometimes things happen that it just can't be overcome and you have to change your plans. You can't stick to the black and white 100% all the time when it comes to public safety.
So, Mr. Mayor, one of the, not to get into a back and forth, this will be my last comment on it, but if we need PLCs and that's an emergency item, then we're gonna buy PLCs. If we need PLCs, it's not an emergency item, but in the water plant's professional opinion, we need them for our community, we're gonna find the funding for them and make that happen. So these 2 things are not competing. My biggest concern is that when we did the budget last year, we were told we needed a well and we put aside money for that well. And we weren't informed of the decision to not fund that well and to not put that well in until we're asking for money for another project. That's when this council became informed of the decision. I wanted to be informed of the decision when we made the decision not to put in the well, and we didn't have to fund something else. So that's the only point that I make. These both are important to me, so they're not competing. We're going to make sure that the citizens in our community have quality water, but budgets do mean something, and we do need to stick to them. And if emergencies arise, then we need to take care of those emergencies when they arise out of contingency. Just my thought. I won't speak to it no more.
All right, Ms. Sykes, do you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
No.
Mayor Winn?
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2021-121. Mr. Carolina, if you read that by title.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, declaring one firearm to be surplus to the city's needs, providing for the conveyance of the firearm to Lieutenant Keith Heston for his outstanding service to the city and its citizens during his career with the Lake City Police Department, and providing for the removal of the firearm from the fixed assets of the city, period.
Okay. Is there a motion as city council resolution 2021-121?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of City Council Resolution 2021-121.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion by council? I think this is, we've had some really good employees in our community over the years. People like Lieutenant Keith Heston, I mean, he's been there, I don't know how many years he lived, but he has served our community well. He should be commended, and I think this is a good resolution. Site, you call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Okay, we've already dealt with resolution 123, so we'll move to item 12, City Council Resolution 2021-124. Mr. Caroline, do you read that by?
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, constituting the fiscal. Excuse me, Mayor. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, constituting the fiscal year 2021 through 2022 preliminary fire assessment resolution relating to the provision of fire protection services, facilities, and programs in the City of Lake City, Florida, confirming previous resolutions as amended, reimposing fire protection assessments and establishing fire protection not to exceed assessment rates, directing the preparation of the preliminary assessment roll, authorizing a public hearing, and directing the provision of notice thereof, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion as City Council Resolution 2021-124?
Mr. Mayor, I would move for the adoption of City Council Resolution 2021-124.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion? Ms. Ox, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson? Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Whit?
Yes. Okay. Next is other items and discussion of possible action extension of state of emergency, got me down. Just speaking with Ms. Sykes last week, I thought it'd be appropriate, especially with the spike in, COVID cases in our community, for us to readdress this and see if we want to do something different. I don't know that we have to do anything, but I didn't know where we'd be a week ago, so anybody got any ideas on changing things or seeing how they go for the next couple of weeks?
Mr. Mayor, I would have a question for the city manager, and I sent her an email, and I know she's busy and may not have had time to respond yet, but I know that City Hall had closed partially previous to our meeting tonight. And so I just wanted an update of where we were at and kind of what our COVID policy is here at City Hall for our employees and the public in general.
Right now, we have 5 active cases, 5 coming back from COVID releases from their doctors with statements. No updates on vaccination, of course, that's up to the individual, and we are to maintain CDC guidelines.
Is City Hall fully open?
Yes.
Anybody got any recommendation, change anything? Just consistent, leave it alone. Okay, item 14 is selecting firm to assist the city manager search. I have 2 people that wanted to speak, so Mr. Warren, if you want to speak at this time.
Mr. Mayor, with all due respect, the way that I've seen some of the councils deal with some of the resolutions I find to be very important to the citizens of this town, I've lost my appetite to speak to item 14.
Mr. Bowden?
I don't care.
Okay. There was an email went out today that had a list of firms. It was a lengthy email. I think there was 4 or 5 firms on it. I know nobody had time to review it. One was 33-6, 19-5, 15-450 plus So there's a couple under 20,000, but I think everybody needs to review it. See, but at least everybody has the information.
You said that went out today?
Anybody else got any comments?
Mr. Mayor, I think that's wise. I haven't had an opportunity to review it, and so I think we need to take the time. We don't need to rush. We do have an interim city manager in place, and so I think that we need to get it right.
I agree. Okay. So next we will move into departmental administration, and the first item is the amendment about the water plant. Ms. Fields, or you want Mr. Osborne, or you?
Mike Osborne.
Hello, we put this emergency in, for emergency refurbishment and upgrade proposal we received from Exilum for one of our ozone generators. Back in May, we have a contract with Exilum. They come twice a year. They do, any technical work that we don't have certified people for. And back in May, they told us that one of the generators was getting to the point where it's gonna need to be cleaned, so we plan on budgeting for both of them. Unfortunately, this one's getting a lot worse, a lot quicker than presumed. Now, granted, these have been online for 14 years, and they usually have to be cleaned about every 5 years. So we've been extremely lucky with the way we run the plant and the care we've taken and the work we've done in preventive maintenance to keep these things running as long as we have. But it is getting extremely close to that failing point, and speaking with Exilum, it's gonna take 6 to 8 weeks from the approval of the agreement to get the snap rings and stuff manufactured to do this. So if we were to wait until October for the new budget, where we budgeted to do both of them, we're looking another 4 to 6 weeks after that. And by then, this ozone generator could possibly fail, and we'd be left with one. And if something happened with that, like a lightning strike or something that took something out, we'd be without treatment for the plant. So we're looking to do an emergency order and sign an agreement with them to get the process started and get the worst generator hopefully completed by the end of this fiscal year. And then we'll work on the next one, the next fiscal year, the one that's not as bad.
Mr. Mayor, what's the cost?
The cost for the one is $124,770.
And where are we recommending to allocate the funds from?
What's left over from the well, the infrastructure. We're trying to put to good use the money we already have budgeted.
How much do we have left? Do you know?
Out of that well, yeah, the well was originally, we had over $400,000 budgeted between the well and the generator for the well.
The reason I'm asking is, you say it's 124, but it could be a little bit more.
No, this is a set. We have the agreement papers from Wedeco Exilum. All we got to do is sign it, and as soon as we sign it, send it to them, they will order the parts, and they will get things proceeding and moving forward.
Okay.
Now with this, it's an actual the refurbishment, and it's called refurbishment and upgrade because the actual dielectrics that are inside it, they've upgraded them over the years to become more efficient. So once we get this done, we will actually be using less power. They'll be more efficient. Plus they come with a 10-year warranty. Like I said, the last ones came with a 5-year warranty, and we've gone 14 years with them, so.
So this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. Our community needs this maintenance to be done. Kudos to the water plant staff for getting 14 years out of something that would have lasted 5 years. So that's a huge savings for us for it to last that long. So again, this is not a project that competes. Now I don't know funding source wise. I'll leave that up to the city manager, to me, this is something that would come, be a contingency item. But it's not a question of whether or not we need it and we're going to provide it. It's just a question of where does the money come from? So, and I see Ms. Duncan's looking at me. So could you speak to that a little bit, maybe?
I think I can answer the question. What they're doing is they're taking the 350, Mike, you said 400,000.
Well, we had 350 for the well and 500 for a generator for the well.
Okay, so you're looking at 400,000 of projects that they cannot complete. So therefore, basically, you're taking that money and using it for those two projects. So he just said that he was gonna spend 139,496 on those logic
PLCs.
things.
Yes.
So that would leave him 260,504, and he's only asking for 124,770.
Yeah, so so for me, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Ms. Duncan. For me, Mr. Mayor, it's not a question of whether or not we approve. I think we absolutely have to approve it. So I would support the request.
Okay. Motion,
Yes, sir. That's a motion.
Second.
got a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? The secretary call the roll, and it is an emergency item. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, may we just redo the motion real quick? Is it a motion to approve the emergency refurbishment and upgrade of the ozone generator at the water treatment plant in the amount of 124,770? The motion identifies the funding source as funds budgeted in projects for the well.
Yes, ma'am. That was exactly my motion, word for word.
That's what I thought you said. All right, Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
Yes.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mayor Whit.
Yeah. Okay. Next is discussion and possible action, fire pension board appointee, Ms. Duncan.
Last couple of years, I've taken over filing the annual report for fire pension. And in the fire pension report, it has a question on there that asks about the number of board members that you have. We're missing a board member, and I know it's been brought up before, but we're missing a board member on that board. It should have 5, and we only have 4 currently after Russ Plummer left probably about 3 or 4 years ago. So if we just need to replace that board member, and that's a city board member, so it needs to be someone within the city limits to be on that board. So I don't know if you have any ideas or you have anyone in mind you might recommend. And possibly they would do that. I know that there were some that said that they would, and then they backed out, so.
All right. We're thinking about it. Get some suggestions.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Is there a time frame, Ms. Duncan, that you would need that person in place by, so that way we're aware?
I would like to have it by the end of this fiscal year so that I can answer that question affirmatively. So I've not been able to do that for several years now.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Are there any applicants that were interested previously or?
Someone had brought someone to the, I can't remember what the guy's name, but they had brought it before this gentleman, and he said that he would serve, but then he backed out. So I don't know of any names, and so I know that you guys, you all, you two live in the city, and I guess, well, all of you do, don't you? That's why you're on the council. So anyway, I just need someone within the community to come forward and try to be on this board. And obviously, in order to be on this board, you actually need to know a little bit about, not necessarily accounting, but a little bit about investments and that sort of thing. I mean, they will train you, so that's okay. They can train you, but it helps if you got a little bit of background in it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next item 16, I think Mr. Bowden want to speak to that.
Well, Mayor, I did, but I guess.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess it depends on what the recommendations are going forward. I would only say this, that in talking about the homeless, we need to be as compassionate as possible. We can't police our way out of the homeless situation. Those people who land on the benches and standing in the park and sleeping overnight, they're human beings. Sometimes they don't have enough but that. So as we move forward, I know there's complaints, I know people don't like it, walk in the store, they come out and they look down and it bothers them. They want to vomit almost. But those are people. And there are people in our community that got kids going to school, they sleep, their parents sleep in the car, they're homeless. So these are not the only homeless people we got in our community. But moving forward, I want to ask that whatever you do, deal with these people like they're human beings, not just be some criminals that hang out, all people downtown. I don't think it's about purse snatching and B&Es and all that going on with the homeless. In fact, I find them to be some of the most passive people I come in contact with. So I don't know what the recommendation is going to be coming from the city manager, but I want to be sure that's the fact.
Thank you. Ms. Fields?
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. And again, what he is saying, I understand that there is a homeless issue here within the city. But at the same time, we don't have an ordinance, so there's limited options as far as what we can and cannot do. However, there are still business owners and vendor complaints as well as our own public works. So there needs to be some type of ordinance created by the council as far as what we should and should not do. I think at one point, the chief and I spoke maybe a month or so ago, and even she is limited as far as what she can do. So far, we don't have they're not breaking rules or, deliberately doing anything as far as violating the law. So we can't go that direction, but we do need to create or find a space for them here within the city.
Mr. Mayor, I have a comment on it. So I heard Mr. Bowden speak, and I think being a business owner in a unique position right on 90 and having homeless people decide to live in my property and trying to transition that when you've got your family getting threatened is something we need to address. Now, in the past, the police have helped with that on occasion, but it takes a while because you have to document the threats before you can do anything. So I know I had another family member recently couldn't get out of her car at Belk's because of panhandlers, and she was afraid. So we can say they're doing things, legal, but I'm concerned about, are we taking stock of why the people are homeless? There could be mental illness, there could be addiction issues, and it's not up to the citizens of the city who are tax-paying citizens to fund to take care of these people, in my opinion. On the other hand, the business owners and people who own the real estate here in town, it's not for us to take that cost on either and say, we've got to fund a place for you to stay. The shed dealers have to leave sheds unlocked so they don't get broken into. So to me, there is criminal activity. So I think there's something we can address through a good writing of an ordinance, something that we could do to protect the citizens where they live. And at the same time, to be cognizant that they are people and they need some kind of help. But how do you balance it? That's the big question. And how do you not put one group at risk at the expense of the other group? Because I'm not willing to give away safety to allow people to sleep in my backyard. I'm just not. I think that's less safe, and it's more likely someone's going to get hurt. And it's getting to be worse. It's pretty bad. If you go out, Texas Roadhouse, a great example. If I get one call a week, I probably get 5 a week. There's a whole community there, and they're not overly friendly. It's threatening to people. You can't just go by these areas. They're not as friendly as someone. Now, right downtown, never had a problem. We're running 3 to 4 people a week out at the business because, in a nice way, you're doing business, that's one thing, but when you start making sexual comments and you start doing things, you got to do something. You can't have your employees being harassed. So we need to take action and do something. I'm just not sure what that needs to be.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
This issue comes up periodically. I remember before, maybe about 2 years ago, we had a joint meeting with us and the county, and this issue came up, and it was a big issue. And I'd said in that meeting, and I wholeheartedly believe it, the role, in my opinion, my personal opinion, the role of the church oftentimes is charity. And what I would encourage people in our community to do is if ministering to the homeless and their needs is important to you, then I would encourage you to be involved in your church. Let your pastor know that that's important. Tied to that church. I think that that's one of the things that we can do. If it's important to you as an individual, if you have family members who are suffering from situations that contribute to homelessness, help them out. Help out our fellow community. I don't think it's a way that we can for us and the city council, I don't know that there's a way that we can, spend our way out. The problem is bigger than just us. The problem is, here on this council. The problem is a community problem, and it's a personal problem for each and every one of us that live here. And so if it speaks to your heart, I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage our faith-based leaders to speak to that. I would love to sit down with our faith-based leaders in our community and try to work on this issue. I think in addition to that, I think there are secular organizations that also perform a vital function. And so I think we need to look at what is it that they're asking and how can we support them? When it comes to private property is different, as Mr. Sampson says with his business. That property owner is responsible for his or her place of business, and I would expect that they would want it safe to conduct business. But I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Bowden. It's not you can't police your way out of homelessness. We have to work together as a community, and I think that the solution lies with us as individuals. And if it's on your heart to do, I think you need to help in any way that you can help with that. Just my 2 cents.
Mr. Mayor, I think the chief had something to say.
Yes.
It's really great hearing this topic come before City Council tonight. Just like to make you aware that we've been meeting for 2 years with Jennifer Anchors, United Way. We've had Pastor Travis George, David Krause, County Commissioner Toby Witt, of course, Mr. Heffenberger when he's here, and I've sort of mentioned that to Amy as well, Ms. Fields as well. We've been meeting for now 2 years talking about this issue and trying to come up with ways of how to deal with this. And just as you mentioned, and I've shared and said on that, and I've said often, we cannot police our way out of this. Just a week or 2 ago, we had a tour. We went to, I had to not go, but I planned to go with the group. We did a tour of Ability Housing in Jacksonville to see if we can do that, to bring housing here for that. David Krause has committed funds to trying to find ways how we can help with the homeless situation. So we have been appealing to the faith-based community. We do have a summit that we will be having this month. It will be at the American Legion location. We'll be talking about how we can deal with the homeless situation. So this is not a moot point. We've been trying to deal with it, come up with ways of dealing with this. And I don't want the citizen to get tired of calling us. If there's a threat, call us right there. They keep believing, coming back, keep calling us, because we're going to try our best to have compassion and do what we can. But it is a holistic approach to dealing with this, and we do need all stakeholders at the table. But I do want this council to know that we are trying our best to make sure that we're handling with compassion, and we are meeting monthly. So I would invite you to come to the meeting so that we can continue with the discussion, how we can approach this holistic, or even contact Jennifer Anchors as well. She's with the United Way, and we're making ways, but it's a tough road. It's a tough road to do that. So I just want to let you know, city, we need to be at the table, and we need to be at the table with funds to make this happen. The county's already committed that they do have funds to help us with this, and so we need to be at the table with funds as well. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, one of the things as Chief was speaking that I was thinking about too is school's about to start back. And we're about to have children back in school, hopefully, right, with COVID. But all of us, I'm sure, are concerned about children and homelessness. And so the school board also plays a role, because oftentimes they identify through the children what families are struggling. And one of the ways to assist with homelessness, quite frankly, is to prevent a family who is maybe one bill away from homelessness, right? If they need help, if we can keep them in their home as opposed to allowing them out on the street. And so I think the school board plays a big role, because oftentimes it's those parents who are working with those and teachers who work with the children who see that need. And I think it's probably a lot more effective to prevent a homelessness, maybe than it is to tackle it after you're already in the system and you're already going down that road. It's just a thought. Chief is right. We need all the stakeholders at the table. Absolutely.
And Mr. Mayor, another comment. So homelessness is not illegal, but some of the activities of the homeless needs to be better looked into. And so I don't know if maybe we could figure out who's in these encampments and try to figure out who's here. That might be a good thing. I don't know if Jennifer and them are doing that.
We do, they do. They actively go out. They have a group that goes out all the time looking for the homeless. They pass out tickets to them where they get food and things like that. So they're actively looking for the homeless. And just, there are about 231 families in our city alone that are homeless. I want to take this privilege to get this Tuesday, August 31st.
Chief, could you come to the microphone, and maybe the online folks are not gonna hear you if you're gonna make an announcement. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
So Tuesday, August the 31st, from 9 to 12, at the American Legion, that's when we're having our homeless services summit. And so I would encourage everyone to please come there because the stakeholders will be there. We will be talking about what are the solutions and how we can make things work. We will deal with the problems and concerns that you have from 9 to 12, 9 a.m. to 12. We have faith-based there, police there. Everybody's going to be there talking about it. So if you can come to that, please come so that your voices can be heard, especially the city. We really do need to be at the table.
Chief, what's that date again?
August 31st from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. At the American Legion. And so we're looking forward to having a good discussion about it.
Thank you. Anything else on that? If not, there's comments of council. We got any comments before we adjourn and move into our next meeting?
American Manager's comment from the audience.
Y'all,
I want to say this because I'm happy we drop things off at the doorstep of the church because Jesus did pay it all, but it takes everybody's help. One of the things that concerns me listening to us discuss our conversation right now is if we're going to have a conversation about homelessness, we need to make sure that we bring in a mental health expert because a lot of those persons who are homeless have mental health issues, and it would be egregious of us who don't have the expertise to try to make a decision on how to help them. Furthermore, I would suggest the city that we might find something where we work out an agreement. I'm sure that between the churches, white, black, red, and green, we can support a facility if the city looks at putting together a facility that would help redirect, get information to work. Everybody's hiring right now. The problem is not everybody has ID, an address, or a social security card to be hired. And so we need to look at those type of things that help us employ those people and get them back on their feet, not just saying, how do we deal with it? Let's write an ordinance. Let's call the police about it. And I think that that's an effective measure that if you bring that part to the table, if we get with the county and they bring that part to the table, then faith-based leaders can bring their part to the table and nonprofits can bring their part to the table. And that's what it looks like to work together. Thank you.
I was gonna do it at the next meeting, but go ahead. Ms. Rachel Walker signed it late, so.
Yeah, there's. Sorry about that. Okay, so I moved here like a year and a half ago, and I was born and raised in Gainesville, and it occurred to me that there's not public transportation. And I work with students. I'm an occupational therapist here at the school. And so I started researching it, and I came across Mr. Sessions with Swanee Valley Transit. And so I asked him, why are there not more routes? So what he currently does is 6 stops from Live Oak to the college. And I had the opportunity to meet the president of the college. And when I spoke to Mr. Sessions and I interviewed him, he said that the president is on board with the idea of public transportation. So I asked, why is this so hard? Why is it not implemented more? Why are there not more routes? And so he explained to me
that part of the issue is the infrastructure. So although somebody decided to put benches down, there's not like the, on the road where you veer off to stop. And so I was like, well, how would we do that? And so he explained that if the city council like did the research to prove the need for public transportation from our community, that would allot the funding, so that the Department of Transportation would therefore provide the funding to make the turnoffs on the side of the road. At which point he could implement more of his services because his bus drivers will be safe. And so they won't be at risk for an accident stopping on the middle of night. So he explained that out of his pocket, he has done the research previously to show that there is a need in Lake City for public transportation. So there has been previous research that supports that it would be, you know, like, it would most likely show that our community has this need. And then it wouldn't come from y'all for the funding, it would come from the state. And so I think now is the opportune time to work on that because of the COVID virus. There's a lot of like specials going on with the college. So there's a lot of deals. So now is the time that people that would like to go to college can go to college, but maybe those people don't have a way to get to college. There's also a huge high number of unemployment here. Like I don't think I can go anywhere without being hiring. So I think that if there is funding that would be required in the city, that the increase in college revenue and the increase in like the employment would just cycle back into our community. And so I was like here to ask if there's any way that our city can fund the research to prove the need for both.
If we can look into it, we can do our budgets. But I appreciate you coming.
What?
I said we're fixing to do our budget, so that's one of the things we can look at.
Yeah, you can look at it. We can do your budget.
We can certainly look at it. It is a need. Thank you. All right, comments of council. All right, that will be adjourned and we'll go into our community redevelopment agency. Okay. Let Ms. Sykes get changed over here. Do I have to? Yeah.
I also want to thank Mr. And Mr. Krause